Change is one of the most certain things in life. From the moment we are born, we are placed into an ever-moving, ever-evolving world where nothing stays the same. Seasons change, people change, circumstances shift, and life continues to unfold whether we are ready or not. The question is never if change will come, it is how we respond to it. Many people resist change because it feels uncomfortable. It pulls us away from what is familiar, what is predictable, and what we feel we can control. But God never called us to live in comfort. He called us to live in purpose. And purpose requires movement. Purpose requires transformation. Purpose demands that we step out of the old and embrace the new, not by fear, but by faith. Every great move of God in the Bible came through change. Abraham had to leave his homeland. Joseph had to go through betrayal, slavery, and prison before stepping into his destiny. Moses had to leave the palace and enter the wilderness before he could lead a nation. David had to transition from shepherd boy to warrior before he could become a king. And Jesus himself left the glory of heaven, took on human form, endured suffering, and embraced the cross. Because change was necessary for redemption. God is a God of seasons. He does not change, but he changes things. He moves us from glory to glory, from faith to faith, from one level to another. And every transition is an opportunity for growth. But growth is not automatic. Growth is a choice. It is a decision to trust God when he shifts you, to remain faithful when he stretches you, and to walk boldly when he calls you forward. Do not fear change when it comes. Do not fight what God is trying to do in your life. What looks like disruption is often divine direction. What seems like loss is often preparation for greater gain. What appears to be an ending is in God's hands a new beginning. The discomfort you feel is simply the stretching of your capacity. The challenge before you is proof that God is preparing you for something greater. Change is one of life's greatest certainties. From the moment we take our first breath, we are surrounded by movement, transitions, and shifts that shape our experiences and define our journey. Seasons shift, circumstances evolve, and people come and go, yet one thing remains true. How we respond to change determines the direction of our lives. Growth is never automatic, it is intentional. It is the result of embracing change with the right mindset and understanding that every transition carries the potential for transformation. Many people resist change because it threatens their sense of control. The familiar feels safe, predictable, and manageable, while the unknown seems risky and uncertain. But the fear of change is often the very thing that keeps people trapped in mediocrity. Comfort zones are deceptive because they give the illusion of security while limiting potential. Nothing new, nothing great, and nothing extraordinary can ever come from a place of stagnation. Growth only happens when we are willing to step beyond what we know and embrace what is ahead, even when it is unfamiliar. Change is never easy. It often comes with discomfort, stretching, and challenges that test our patience and endurance. But challenges are not meant to destroy us. They are designed to strengthen us. Just as a seed must break through the soil to grow into a tree, we must be willing to endure the breaking process to step into new levels of growth. Every major breakthrough in life comes through a moment of transition. The difference between those who rise and those who remain stuck is the willingness to embrace change rather than resist it. Growth requires a mindset shift. It is not just about going through change, but growing through change. A person can experience change and still remain the same if they do not allow the process to refine them. Perspective is everything. When a person sees change as a burden, they will shrink back in fear, but when they see it as an opportunity, they will rise in expectation. Challenges, trials, and transitions are not designed to weaken us. They are meant to build us into who we were created to be. Opportunities for growth are hidden within moments of change. Some of the most successful people in history did not reach their full potential by staying in comfort, but by stepping into the unknown. They took risks, embraced uncertainty, and allowed themselves to be stretched beyond their limits. Every great leader, innovator, and visionary had to go through a process of transformation. The ability to adapt and learn from change is what separates those who succeed from those who remain stagnant. The process of growth through change requires faith, patience, and perseverance. It demands that we trust that every shift has a purpose, even when it does not make sense. It requires the discipline to keep moving forward, even when the path is unclear. Growth does not happen overnight, and it is not always obvious in the moment. But every small step taken in the right direction leads to a greater outcome. Change is inevitable. It will come whether we are ready or not. But growth is a decision. It is a choice to see every challenge as a lesson, every transition as an opportunity, and every moment of discomfort as a stepping stone to something greater. God never designed us to stay in one place, physically, mentally, or spiritually. Everything He created operates in cycles and seasons. The earth rotates, the tides shift, the sun rises and sets, and the seasons change. Nothing in creation remains stagnant, and neither should we. But often, when change comes, people resist it because it challenges what is familiar. Comfort can be dangerous when it keeps people from stepping into the fullness of what they were created to be. What feels safe is not always what is best, and what is familiar is not always where growth happens. God's plan is never for people to remain in the same mindset, the same situation, or the same season forever. He is always calling His people to greater, but greater requires movement. Throughout history, God has used change to shift His people from one stage to another. When He called Abraham, He told him to leave his homeland and go to a place that He would show him. Abraham had no clear destination, no roadmap, and no guarantee of what the future held, but he moved in obedience. That single act of embracing change led to the birth of a great nation. When God called Moses, He pulled him out of the comfort of the wilderness and sent him back to Egypt to lead His people to freedom. Moses had every reason to resist the change. He had settled into a quiet life. He had fears about his ability, and he was reluctant to step into a new assignment. But God's purpose required that he embrace the change, and through his obedience, an entire nation was delivered. The pattern is the same throughout Scripture. Joseph was thrown into unexpected change when he was sold into slavery, but that very shift positioned him for leadership in Egypt. Ruth had to leave her homeland to step into a divine appointment that placed her in the lineage of kings. David was called from the fields to the battlefield, then from the battlefield to the palace. Every person God used had to move beyond where they were to embrace something greater. Growth is impossible without change, and change is impossible without movement, but movement requires trust. Many times, change does not come with all the answers. It does not come with a clear picture of what the future holds. That is why so many people hesitate. They want to see the full plan before they take the first step. They want assurance before they walk into the unknown. But faith does not work that way. Faith requires obedience before understanding. Faith demands trust in the one who orchestrates the seasons of life. When God brings change, it is not to destroy, but to develop. It is not to break, but to build. But only those who trust Him enough to embrace the shift will experience the blessing on the other side. Change often comes wrapped in challenges. It does not always look like an open door. Sometimes it looks like an ending, a disappointment, or an unexpected transition. But God uses even the most difficult changes to position people for their purpose. What looks like a setback is often a setup for something greater. When God is ready to elevate, He will often disrupt what is comfortable. When He is ready to bring someone into a new level, He will allow them to be stretched beyond what they think they can handle. But those who embrace the process, those who refuse to settle, and those who choose faith over fear will see the rewards of obedience. Every transition in life carries the potential for transformation. Change is not just about shifting from one season to another. It is about what happens in the process. The way a person handles change determines whether they grow or remain stagnant. Many people go through transitions, but not everyone experiences transformation. The difference lies in perspective, attitude, and willingness to embrace the lessons that come with change. Growth is not a passive process. It does not happen simply because time passes or circumstances shift. A person can experience significant changes in their life and still remain the same internally if they do not allow the process to shape them. Transition is an opportunity, but only those who recognize it as such will benefit from it. Some people see change as a disruption while others see it as development. Some see obstacles while others see opportunities. It is not the change itself that determines the outcome, but how a person responds to it. When challenges arise, the natural tendency is to resist, complain, or retreat into what feels safe. But every challenge carries a lesson, and every transition presents an opportunity for growth. A seed does not become a tree without breaking through the soil. A butterfly does not emerge without struggling to escape the cocoon. Strength is built in the process. Wisdom is developed in the journey. Character is shaped in the moments of discomfort. The difficulty of transition is not a sign to stop, but a sign to press forward. Every person who has ever achieved greatness had to go through seasons of transition. No one arrives at their destiny without walking through a process of change. Joseph had dreams of leadership, But before he could step into his calling, he had to go through betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment. The transition was painful, but it prepared him for the position he was destined to hold. Moses had to leave the palace and enter the wilderness before he could lead a nation. The process refined him and taught him dependence on God. David was anointed as king while still a shepherd, but before he could sit on the throne, he had to go through battles, rejection, and years of preparation. His transition was not easy, but it built the character required for kingship. Transformation requires a shift in mindset. A person cannot enter a new season with an old way of thinking. Many people desire new opportunities but are unwilling to let go of familiar habits, attitudes, and perspectives. Holding on to the past can hinder the ability to step into the future. Growth demands that certain things be left behind. It requires letting go of fear, doubt, and anything that no longer aligns with the next level. Just as old wineskins cannot hold new wine, an old mindset cannot sustain a new season. Transition also requires endurance. Growth does not happen overnight. A seed planted today does not bear fruit tomorrow. There is a process of watering, nurturing, and waiting. Many people give up too soon because they do not see immediate results. But transformation takes time. The discomfort of transition is temporary, but the rewards of perseverance are lasting. Those who endure the process, who refuse to quit in the middle of change, and who remain faithful despite uncertainty will see the fulfillment of what they were meant to become. What seems like loss is often preparation for greater gain. In life, there will always be moments when things are taken away, when doors close, when relationships shift, or when opportunities seem to slip through our hands. These moments can feel like setbacks, disappointments, or even failures, but what often looks like loss on the surface is actually a setup for something greater. The problem is that many people focus so much on what is leaving that they fail to see what is coming. They mourn what they lost instead of preparing for what is next. Loss is a natural part of life, but it is never the final chapter. It is often a signal that something new is about to begin. When one season ends, it makes room for another. When one door closes, it creates the opportunity for a better one to open. But if a person holds on too tightly to what was, they will miss what could be. Growth requires release. Just as trees shed their leaves in the fall to prepare for new life in the spring, there are things in life that must be let go in order to embrace what is ahead. One of the greatest challenges in embracing change is the pain of losing something familiar. People grow attached to routines, relationships, jobs, and environments that feel safe. Even when something is no longer beneficial, there is a tendency to hold onto it simply because it is known. But holding on to the past can become a barrier to stepping into the future. There are times when what looks like a loss is actually divine intervention, removing distractions, wrong connections, or limiting situations to make space for something better. Joseph experienced what seemed like a series of losses: being sold by his brothers, losing his freedom, being falsely accused, and being thrown into prison. Each event appeared to take him further away from his dreams. But every loss was positioning him for his ultimate assignment. The betrayal that seemed like a tragedy was actually a transportation to his destiny. The imprisonment that looked like a setback was the very thing that placed him in front of Pharaoh. What seemed like loss was in reality preparation for something greater. Job lost everything: his wealth, his health, and his family. His friends assumed he had done something wrong. His wife told him to give up. But what looked like devastation was a setup for restoration. In the end, he received double of everything he lost. His story proves that when things are taken away, it is not always a sign of failure or punishment. Sometimes it is an indication that something greater is on the horizon. Even in nature, pruning is necessary for growth. A gardener does not cut away branches to harm a tree, but to help it produce more fruit. If the old branches are not removed, they will drain energy from the parts that are meant to grow. In the same way, there are times when things are removed from life because they are no longer serving a purpose. What seems like a painful loss is actually a strategic pruning for greater fruitfulness. Perspective determines how loss is handled. Some people become bitter and discouraged when things are taken away, while others trust that something better is being prepared. The difference is in how they view the process. If loss is seen as an ending, it will lead to despair. But if it's seen as preparation, it will lead to expectation. The ability to recognize that every closed door is making room for a better one allows a person to move forward with confidence rather than regret. Those who trust the process, release what is gone, and prepare for what is coming will always find that what looked like loss was actually a divine setup for greater things ahead. Resistance to change can delay divine destiny. Many people desire to step into their purpose, but when change comes, they hesitate. They pray for growth, but resist the process that produces it. They want new opportunities, but hold on to old mindsets, habits, and environments that keep them stuck. Change is often the bridge between where a person is and where they are meant to be, but that bridge must be crossed willingly. Those who resist change often find themselves circling the same mountain, stuck in the same cycle, wondering why they have not progressed. Throughout history, resistance to change has been one of the greatest obstacles to destiny. When God delivered the Israelites from Egypt, He was leading them to the promised land, a place of blessing and inheritance. But their resistance to change kept them wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Every time a challenge arose, they longed to return to Egypt, even though it was a place of bondage. Their fear of the unknown caused them to prefer slavery over the uncertainty of the journey to freedom. What was meant to be an 11-day journey turned into decades of delay because they refused to embrace the process. Fear is one of the greatest reasons people resist change. The unknown is uncomfortable, and stepping into something new requires trust. Many people remain in situations that no longer serve them because they would rather stay in what is familiar than face uncertainty. But fear is an enemy of destiny. It causes people to shrink back instead of move forward. It keeps them bound to what is safe instead of stepping into what is significant. When fear leads, purpose is postponed. Comfort is another reason people resist change. It is easy to settle in a place where things are predictable, where routines are established, and where there is little risk. But comfort zones can become prisons if they prevent growth. No one can rise to their full potential while clinging to what is easy. Every great leader, visionary, and world changer had to embrace change in order to fulfill their calling. Abraham had to leave his homeland. Joseph had to transition from a prisoner to a ruler. David had to move from the fields to the palace. None of them could stay where they were and still become who they were meant to be. Resistance to change also comes from a lack of trust in the process. Many people want to see the entire picture before they take the first step. They want certainty before they move. But faith does not work that way. Faith requires movement before answers. It demands trust in the one who holds the future, even when the path is unclear. Those who wait for everything to make sense before they step forward often miss opportunities that were meant for them. Opportunities have expiration dates. When God presents an open door, it must be walked through in the right season. Delayed obedience can result in missed moments. The longer change is resisted, the longer destiny is delayed. There are people who were meant to accomplish certain things years ago, but are still waiting because they have not yet embraced the shifts required to move forward. Change is not always easy, but it is always necessary. It is the stretching, the breaking, and the discomfort that produce growth. Those who resist it may find temporary relief, but they will also find themselves stuck in the same place, wondering why things have not progressed. Every transition, every shift, and every uncomfortable season is an invitation to a greater level. Those who embrace it, trust the process, and move forward despite uncertainty will step into everything they were destined to become. Embracing change in faith unlocks new levels of purpose and blessing. Change is often uncomfortable, but it is necessary for growth. Many people desire elevation, new opportunities, and greater impact, but they are unwilling to step into the unknown. Growth always requires movement, and movement requires faith. Without faith, change can feel like loss, disruption, or even a setback. But when faith is applied, change is seen as an open door to something greater. Faith allows a person to see beyond what is happening in the present and trust in what is coming. Faith is not just believing that things will work out, it is taking action even when there is no evidence of what is ahead. It is the confidence that every transition is leading to something greater. When God calls someone to a new level, he does not always give all the details up front. He often requires movement before revelation. Abraham was called to leave his homeland without knowing his destination. He had no map, no clear instructions, just a command to go. It was his faith that unlocked the promise. Had he waited for full clarity, he would have remained in the same place, missing what God had prepared for him. Fear and doubt are the enemies of faith. They whisper questions like, what if this doesn't work? Or what if I fail? Many people miss divine opportunities because they allow uncertainty to hold them back. But faith does not rely on human understanding. It is based on trusting God's plan even when the path is unclear. Peter walked on water because he stepped out of the boat. As long as his eyes were fixed on Jesus, he did the impossible. The moment he focused on the waves, he began to sink. The lesson is clear. Faith keeps a person moving forward, while fear keeps them stuck. Faith requires obedience. Sometimes change comes in the form of a divine instruction that does not make sense in the natural. Naaman was told to dip in the Jordan River 7 times to be healed. It seemed foolish to him, but his healing was on the other side of his obedience. The widow in Zarephath was asked to give her last meal to the prophet Elijah, and because of her faith, she experienced supernatural provision. The walls of Jericho did not fall because of human effort, but because of obedience to an unusual command. Faith activates miracles, but obedience unlocks them. Faith also requires endurance. Change does not always bring immediate results. There are times when a step of faith is taken and nothing seems to happen. This is where many people give up. They start strong but grow weary in the process. But faith is not just about starting, it is about finishing. It is about trusting that even when nothing seems to be shifting, something is happening behind the scenes. Joseph remained faithful despite years of hardship. David endured seasons of waiting before stepping into his kingship. Those who hold on, who continue believing, and who refuse to give up will always see the fulfillment of what was promised. Every new level requires a new level of faith. The same mindset that worked in the past will not sustain the next season. Faith must grow just as opportunities grow. What was once a challenge becomes a stepping stone for something greater. Those who remain stagnant in their faith will struggle to embrace new doors. But those who continue to trust, move forward, and obey will walk into blessings beyond what they imagined. Faith is the key that unlocks everything God has prepared, but it must be accompanied by action. Those who embrace change with faith will always find themselves stepping into greater levels of purpose, influence, and blessing. Change is not an obstacle, it is an opportunity. It is the pathway God uses to shape, refine, and elevate those who are willing to embrace it. Every shift, every transition, and every unexpected turn is designed to move his people closer to their divine purpose. Resistance to change leads to stagnation, but faithful obedience unlocks new levels of growth, wisdom, and blessing. What looks like loss is often a setup for something greater. And what feels like discomfort is often the stretching required for expansion. Those who trust the process, release the past, and step forward in faith will always find that God's plans are far greater than anything they could have imagined. Destiny is never found in staying the same. It is found in the courage to embrace change and move with God into the fullness of his purpose.